The record now.
Oh
Ah,
yeah.
we're
Ah,
recording. We're,
yes.
we're live. We were
We're
live
live.
before.
Yeah. Well, I had to click OK. I clicked OK. So I mean, I don't know if the first seconds were captured or not.
Oh, that's fine. So I thank you for the email. And with regard
Yeah.
to Mark McDonald on Monday at 3 o'clock, that's very sounds very interesting, doesn't it? This,
Yeah. And it sounds like somebody is trying to set up that it will be recorded or streamed or whatever in one way or another. I forget who that was, but somebody's who's
ah,
good at this kind of thing was planning to try to do that. And I mean, since it's a big public thing, clearly, because it's been in the newspaper too. It was in the Daily Telegraph.
yes, I haven't seen that article yet. I was told about it last night in comments on a
Yeah, I
video
heard
that
about it. I only heard
uh,
about it this morning, but I did look in the article, and well, the article doesn't say anything we don't know. It just says what we've heard, which is
yes,
that
it's got
there's
to
going to be
yes, yes.
there's going to be a press conference, right? Yeah, and sounds very very exciting because they're even going to like announce one piece of new evidence,
Yes,
which
absolutely. And I know there was a channel called Carl Perkins,
uh,
Carl's channel. He
yes, Carl, yeah,
mentioned
he had,
he mentioned that this
yeah,
news had broken, as it were, and that it's 3 o'clock Monday. And I
yes.
really so there's this new evidence. Is this something that obviously we don't want to?
Well,
Is it
nobody
something
knows
that
what it is.
you without you necessarily saying it? Is it something that you're
I,
potentially
I,
aware
I
of?
don't know at all. I mean,
Mm.
I have an idea because I think that what's her name, Helen Shannon. So that's a very nice lady who's sort of, I think, more or less about retired now. She's a chemical engineer by
Ah,
profession, and for some months she's been certainly connected to Mark McDonald's team, and
yes,
was earlier connected to Peter Elston. So she's right there in the thick of things. And what she does is she can solve differential equations. Like,
yes,
so, so let's talk about insulin. The human body has got various organs and it has blood and stuff. And you think of these as being a number of compartments, and stuff is flowing from one place to another. And when various things meet, the chemical reactions happen and new compounds are formed.
right,
And one can, and basically it's the same maths which a chemical engineer would do to uh,
yes,
model what is going on in a refinery. You know, you put in crude
yeah.
oil and this and that and the other, and out comes plastics and I don't know what else. And similarly, you can do it for simple problems like the immunoassay business. There,
Yes.
there, there are like three basic things. There's the stuff coating the bottom of the cells. You chuck in a solution of something, and uh, well, yeah, I mean, and you've also got a sample of blood serum in which there is a certain concentration of something else.
Yes.
So there are like three things, three basic things: the insulin in the blood serum,
Mm.
or C peptide, depending as the case may be, something which reacts with it,
Right.
and something else which the insulin also reacts with. The
Yes.
insulin can stick on the stuff at the bottom, and then something can stick on top of that. And then you can put something which fluoresces on top of that, and then you throw away all the fluids and measure the fluorescence. But while you're
Right.
doing this, a couple of other reactions can go on
Okay.
because the sort of the reagent which you add to the which, yeah, it's called a sandwich. These things are called a sandwich method
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the insulin gets attached to something on the floor of a container, and then something gets attached on top, and then something gets attached on top. So you get a kind of sandwich with insulin in the middle. But
Yes.
what also happens is that the insulin sticks to the stuff which is floating around of its own, and it stays in solution.
Yes. Yes.
So when you chuck out the solution, you are throwing away some of the insulin.
Ah,
Depending on the initial concentrations of the insulin and the stuff which sticks to insulin, and the amount of stuff on the bottom, it can be that you get a nice sandwich at the bottom, and then you measure how big the sandwich is, and then that tells you something about how much insulin is there. But it can also be that the insulin sticks first and much more to the stuff in solution and doesn't stick to the stuff on the bottom at all.
yes. So
and then you end up not seeing anything at all.
Yes. So would you?
And this is called the hook effect.
That's the hook effect. That is the hook effect.
That is the hook effect, because what it says is that if you're only measuring a low concentration of insulin, as that concentration will get bigger, you will see more at the end of the day stuck on the bottom. But if the initial insulin concentration is much too large, you won't see anything stuck on the bottom at all, and you'll just wash it all away and you'll see nothing. So the the measurement, for low, I now I'd have to draw pictures on a graph, but if the concentration would slowly be made bigger, you would get a bigger and bigger signal, until some point you don't start getting a bigger signal anymore. You get the same signal, and then if the concentration was bigger still, you would get terribly low.
Right. So it's...
And now the most famous, the most sort of clear baby F had a huge insulin measurement.
Yes, 4,160 or something like that. Yeah,
really big.
Yeah.
I mean, so big it would have killed an adult in a few hours or something. So it's sort of ludicrous.
It's ludicrous, yeah.
It's ludicrous. But if the C-peptide had been what it should have been, namely 5 times bigger,
yes,
right, which would have been even more ludicrous, but still, maybe it was, then it is quite possible that the C-peptide measurement would have given the answer 0, because it would have been above. The sort of apparatus can only measure accurately in a small interval, a small range of concentrations.
I see what you're saying, and yes.
Yeah. If your concentration of what you're measuring is much too big, you don't actually get to see it at all. Which is, of course, it's counterintuitive, but it's some simple equations which you can solve, and I've done it myself, and you can play with the parameters, the numbers, the rates.
Absolutely. Can I ask you, in light of that, there's something that came up, and it was some time ago on Twitter. I was discussing something with Ron Winter, and his understanding of what Sarita had been looking into earlier in relation to the Roche immunoassays, and what might have been considered to be an error code of, I think it was 999, but that's in relation to the glucose in the blood, that somehow there's a theory around this, isn't it, that the 999 figure meant that couldn't measure it. So in other words, there wasn't low glucose, there was an over amount of glucose in the blood potentially. That's the hypothesis around this, I thought.
Yes, I've heard that too. Okay, and but yes, there were some weird readings, and I didn't understand that at all. But I mean, what is absolutely clear was that the doctors who asked for that test to be done, because they were trying to treat what they thought was either hypo or hyperglycemia.
Yes.
Okay, and maybe they were mistaken in what was wrong with the baby. Maybe it was indeed too much rather than too little, or the other way around. But anyway, they just ignored the result of the measurement.
Yes,
because it didn't make any sense.
Yes.
At all, and the babies were doing fine, slowly getting better, and shipped off to another hospital fairly soon.
But I think they both went home. I think they both went home very quickly after, according to the New Yorker article.
Okay.
And there was,
I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, there's certainly one that went home very soon, and it was described in the New Yorker article based on Rachel Levie's research, that one didn't have any particular symptoms. There was a bit of a struggle to regulate the glucose, but it wasn't that the babies were they didn't crash, as it were. And that's this notion of the crash we've more recently found out, because crashes weren't formally recorded, were they? So a crash is just what you decide it to be, isn't it? And what you decide to demarcate.
No, there was no crash here at all. There were difficulties understanding what was going on. And
yes, that's right.
And I understand that one of them, the L, I believe, it has sustained some damage during birth, and is still is in a wheelchair or something.
Oh, is that baby? Oh, right. The second so-called insulin case. You're right.
Yeah.
Yes. And then we've got this anomaly of the third case about which we don't know anything about.
Yeah.
Which is in. But was I going to say something that the last two videos I've been concentrating on is all around the statistics, the mortality statistics, because I was contacted by a gentleman who made a formal complaint to BBC in relation to the Panorama programme. And the result of that complaint is that the NHS have told the BBC that the 2018 FOI data was all completely wrong. That foundational document we've all been working from, it's apparently wrong. And we've got new data. So in the last two videos I've done, I've showed comparing, contrasting the alleged new corrected data.
Right.
And here's a red flag, I believe, Richard, is that it was corrected in 2023, which just in time for the trial to start. So I thought that stuck out, actually, that they 5 years after that original FOI was answered, the one we've all been working from, it all gets corrected in 2023.
Interesting.
And the reduction of
chaos all these numbers are. And
yes.
This hospital data is administratively collected data, and it's full of errors.
Yes, well, it's sort of this is what it's this is the question that it's raising. Is it correct now, or was it correct then, or is the truth somewhere in the two? Because there are multiple discrepancies, and there are discrepancies in multiple directions as well. So that in the 2018 FOI, there are deaths not being shown, which I've made videos about before, which should have been there, which have now been placed back, i.e. the August and October 2015 deaths.
Yes, those ones.
And conversely, there are deaths. There are, for example, January 2016 in the old data, 2018 FOI, it shows 3 deaths, and now it's showing just 1. So it's working in oppositional ways that it seemed to be wrong in all possible ways, you know.
Interesting. So I have to tell this to John O'Quigley, because he's good with the data. I'm sorry, I'm a statistician, but I'm a very lazy statistician. I want the young generation to do.
Yes, yeah. No, I understand.
You know, I did my work with the Royal Sister Society guys writing that nice report.
Yes.
And I felt that this was what, and we told them what you need to do in cases like this.
Yes.
Okay. And I felt that's done my bit for Lucy Letby. Yeah.
I understand. There's another very specific ramification of this in terms of whether Countess of Chester can be deemed an outlier hospital in terms of the years 2015 and 16, because originally that 2018 FOI shows 17 deaths. And then because the deaths that happened in August and October weren't showing, I was always of the mind, well, there were at least 19. But now they've flipped the script, and now they've brought it right down to 13 deaths for the full 2 calendar years. But the effect of that is, in relation to Dr. McLachlan's work, looking at comparative hospitals, is to show it that it's even less of an outlier comparatively to other hospitals in the area.
Yes.
But the truth of whether the stats match reality is another question altogether. You know?
I think it's clear anyway from what John O'Quigley has done, whether or not the numbers need to be corrected, is that a spike, like it seems there was, because I mean people did notice there were more babies dying.
Yes. I mean, there's an apparent relative spike. Yeah.
And then it stopped again. And we know why they stopped dying again. And we really also understand why they started dying too. But we know the Countess of Chester is not atypical in the size of this jump.
No, well, exactly. There were two other hospitals from memory. There's one up in near Blackpool, and there's one Sherwood Hospital, and they had even a sharper spike, as it were. I think 2014. You'd have to look at the Substack that Dr. McLachlan did on that. So he compares like 14 other hospitals, but he was comparing it using the now apparently false data, according to the BBC. So it's a bit of hearsay in a sense that the NHS have told the BBC that 2018 you can't go by it at all. 2018 FOI.
Well, exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, but really, as we started talking about the conference on Monday, I think that's very interested to hear what this new evidence is, or perhaps it won't be something new, but perhaps it will be a very defined angle on one of the aspects you've already been looking at, perhaps.
Probably. I imagine it will be something we already know something about, but this now it will be supported by half a dozen top-notch professors or something like that, right?
Yes, absolutely.
That's what they need. Now, the crazy thing is, I talk about this with John O'Quigley, and we say that if you look at the statistics, there just isn't the case at all. And why is everybody talking all the time about insulin and air embolism and so on and so on and so on? Because on the one hand, the statistics says that there's just nothing going. There was nothing special there, and Lucy happened to have a very, very large amount of shifts, and she has the right number of events in her shift. But unfortunately, lawyers are never going to listen to statisticians, and so Mark MacDonald has to go through all the 25 or 24 or whatever and come up with, preferably with some new medical insight into why those cases are all natural ones. But it's sort of much ado about nothing, because already during the trial, the first Ben Myers was actually extremely good doing the cross-examinations and showing that Lucy just had not done anything.
Yes, that's right. He did. Other than, I suppose, the thing that unfortunately worked was this agreed fact that there was TPN bag tampering, but somebody else had done it, or it happened through some other means.
That was a stupid mistake which he made even before.
Yes. I can't understand why he was, or why the system, or why he felt he was pushed into that corner of having to accept that as an agreed fact. I don't know.
I'm sure I imagine, well, I mean, my theory about this is that he didn't really do much until the trial really started. And until then, he'd been relying on solicitor Richard Thomas, and he hadn't done very much. And he's not terribly sharp, and probably thought Lucy was guilty. Of course, I mean, they're not supposed to think that, but so I have the feeling Ben Myers was basically going through the motions at the beginning.
Yes.
And so therefore also the pre-trial bit. I mean, when they just had one expert, or maybe two, I can't remember, but who didn't, against the prosecution's whole array of experts.
Yes.
And and their own expert, it seems he wasn't assertive enough. I have the feeling he wasn't used because he was not going to say, well, I know what baby ABC died of.
Right.
Was.
Okay.
He was a good expert in that sense. He knew that you couldn't determine these things, but he was probably so cautious about what he could say. And probably he also didn't realize that the insulin was nothing. I suspect he was also convinced by the insulin measurement, because it's very, like you talk to anybody who's been trained as a doctor or a nurse, and not as a forensic scientist, and they will tell you when you have that ratio, then that definitely means the patient has been given insulin.
Yes, artificial exogenous insulin.
They've all learned this at medical school.
Yeah.
They've been told it at medical school. They've also been told that the immunoassay is reliable and accurate. They've been told that too.
Yes.
Now, do you know what reliable and accurate means?
Well, I remember some discussion over these terms, but the way I took it was that in its own terms, it's reliable. It can replicate the same.
Yeah, exactly.
Effect, but what it's not doing, it's not differentiating necessarily between artificial and
yes.
and also it's got other potential errors.
Yeah. So that was worse than that. So reliable means that if you split your sample in two and measure it twice, or maybe measure it twice on two different machines with the same from the same manufacturer, you'll get pretty similar results.
Yes.
Okay. Now that doesn't mean they're the right results.
No, indeed it doesn't. Indeed it.
No, it doesn't mean that at all.
No.
It just means that you will tend to get the same result if you put in the stuff in the same proportions and do everything just the same again.
Yes.
That's what accuracy means. Now, reliable means if you give it a sample of blood serum with insulin, so let's talk about measuring insulin, with insulin at a concentration between certain lower limit and upper limit.
Yes. Yes.
Then the machine will tell you a number fairly close.
Yes, exactly. So in other words, if you went out of your way to actually test it with actual exogenous synthetic insulin, it would reproduce that. But the bit that's missing out is that it can make a mistake about that. But when that hasn't happened.
It can make a mistake about that, especially if you give it too strong concentration or too lower concentration. And there's a beautiful paper by the former world expert on insulin, forensic insulin. What's his name?
Yes, I know who you mean. What's his name again? Yeah.
I'm not good at names.
I can't remember his name. There's so many names now that are stacked up, but I know.
But it's because he actually used the immunoassay to show that one of or two of Bev Alit's patients had been given insulin, which they shouldn't have been. And there's a beautiful paper by him and Gwen Walk, who's one of the prosecution experts,
yes,
and who learned everything she knows from what's his name, and is now the boss of his former unit.
Yes.
And in that paper, they explain all the things that you have to do in order to be sure from an immunoassay.
Yes.
You can use an immunoassay. You don't have to do something else. You don't have to do the expensive thing. But you can do it with immunoassay. But then you must have a big sample, and you must split it into a lot of small samples, and you must measure higher and higher dilutions.
Right. Okay. So that is another way to really
thin it down. You just chuck in some more water and do it again. Chuck in some more water and again.
Yes.
Taking account of how much the concentration has been reduced.
Yes.
And that way you can kind of get the insulin concentration low enough that it's within the bounds within which you can measure it pretty accurately.
I understand that, and there is an issue with neonates, very small neonates, about getting a sufficient sample, isn't there?
And there are many more issues,
Yeah, in order to get that sufficient sample, in order to do that.
And they're all known. So and Gwen Walk has written a paper together with her former boss explaining all the things you have to do. And the stunning thing is that she could say whatever it was that she said at that trial.
It is stunning. And going back to something you mentioned earlier, that the doctor's initial response when the baby obviously went home was to say, oh, well, this test is obviously incorrect. And so if they could do that so blithely, so easily, even though they must have understood that there is that potential for that to happen.
I think so, yes. Yeah. Though later, I think it was Breary, or was it Gibbs, said, oh, those young doctors, they're so stupid. they should have told us, but they didn't.
Yeah, they should have told us. But well, it's this Dr. ZA who's on maternity leave who rings up Breary and tells him about this thing that happened nearly 2 years ago. From that vantage point, from 2017, she's remembering back 2 years to 2015, isn't she? In the case of baby F.
We have to watch the time now, because I think
we're 20
minutes
25
running
minutes.
Out. There are lots of things I wanted to ask you, but maybe.
Oh yeah, please. But I mean, it's just there's so much to. Do you get a sense that the momentum is really stepping up now in terms of?
Yes, sure. Yes, I'm more confident than I've been for a long time, and Mark McDonald seems to be really full steam ahead. So
fantastic. That's great.
Into it. Holding a press release and announcing that he's got 50 scientists signed up. No.
Yes. Yeah, that's amazing. And another thing, Richard, that if it does come to a retrial, who now, this is a question I've asked, is who would appear for the prosecution really now?
Yes.
Knowing that it's going to be literally forensically examined, all the claims of the original prosecution.
Well, I mean, the CPS will have to look around and see if they can shop around and find some, but I mean, they may have a very hard time, and when they consult with their own experts, they will find out that there's no case.
They'll find out there is no case, because I can't imagine they would try to reprise Dr. Evans to come back and do his stint again.
They've already said they didn't want to have anything more to do with him and he should keep his mouth shut.
Well, that speaks volumes, doesn't it? The fact that that's the attitude towards him and his changing of his mind over at least 3 of the cases.
Yeah. Now he's pretending to be a statistician as well. So that's.
Well, he's a man of many talents, obviously, and it was his kind of case,
Yeah, his kind of case, exactly.
I
wanted to say so much, Mark. I wanted to say so. What's the very important thing I want to say? I so much love and admire your videos and the way you do them. And
thank you very much. I
enjoy your impersonations.
I've taken some of those off now because I'm always ambivalent about them. That in case it may be seen that I think this is a light matter, and really they were kind of they're kind of polemics. Really, they're an attack on what I consider to be.
I think in order to keep sane, we need to be able to keep laughing from time to time.
Well, that's true, as a safety valve. Almost.
They are very effective and valuable at the moment, and indeed they don't have to stay there on internet forever.
Yes, that's true. I mean, it's been I don't know. I'm sure this is something that can affect you emotionally, and I think we've sort of talked about a little bit, isn't it? It does.
Totally, yeah.
I remember last year the feeling. I just want to say I'm very admiring of all the work that you've done. I don't know that much about Daniela Pogliari, but I know, obviously I've watched your videos about Lucia de Berg, and that you've been involved in overturning cases before, and then I think this will be your this will be your third one.
Well, no, this would be my fourth, I hope, except because the third one I did not succeed. I actually helped Mark McDonald in 2 previous attempts for a CCRC application for Benguin.
Oh, right. But do you, in light of that, do you feel that if there's an overturning of this miscarriage of justice in relation to Lucy Letby, it could have a domino knock-on effect to Benguin and other cases such as this?
Yes, I do, and that's basically why. That's part of the reason why I'm still working so hard on Lucy Letby, even though I try not to, because I know it will help Benguin. And actually, Mark McDonald has said that's actually his motivation too.
Yes, because he's and
there's
also the Colin Norris case as well, isn't there? Yeah.
Well, yeah, but he's not involved in that. But he is Benguin's defense lawyer, and he's so angry, basically, that the system did not see that Ben is innocent. And Ben is tricky because of the thing of the syringe. There's this sort of a smoking gun thing.
Yes. This is what they're not. They seem to be repeating these mistakes. They're finding smoking guns that that don't really smoke in reality.
Yeah, but yeah, that's one of the similarities of all these things. There has to be some sort of smoking gun, and then there's and the nurse has to be a bit of an old character, stands out in the crowd, makes some people love them, some people hate them because they're a bit different from the usual run of the mill. You have that in all these cases, and then you have a dysfunctional unit, whether it's an A&E department in the Ben Geen case or a ward full of old people dying of cancer in Daniel Poggiali's case. But I mean, it's a place where people do die.
Yes, indeed, and
place in hospital where people do die, and where things can go out of control and go badly wrong, and also where things get changed. Like management makes some changes in protocols or criteria or whatever, and suddenly people start dying there, when they didn't used to die there.
Absolutely, yes.
Totally arcane, stupid reasons, because somebody turned a knob somewhere else in the hospital, and then this flow of patients changed, and the ones who were going to die anyway started dying somewhere else.
And we certainly had that in the Countess of Chester Hospital in terms of their what they called a restructuring, where they lost a lot of highly experienced, high band nurses, didn't they, in the late 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah.
So that you've got Lucy Letby there, who's only 4 years out of college, but relative, as some of these nurses who did work at the Countess of Chester have said, they've said that she was, well, yes, she's the most experienced there, but she's still relatively inexperienced for this kind of work,
Yes.
But there were people there of 20, 25 years experience prior, before they restructured the unit and to save money as a money saving.
Now, in the last 5 minutes, I mean, maybe you have some last questions for the last 5 minutes, but one of the things I wanted to ask, but of course you don't have to answer it, because I get the feeling you're kind of a private person. You don't talk too much about your private life, and I just wonder what you do in your private life. I believe you are like a poet and a musician.
they're hobbies.
They're job or not, or what it would be if you do have one.
I do some work from home, sort of admin type things, but I was in terms of I'm interested in writing and music just as a kind of hobby thing. So I mean, when I first found out about this case, well, I'm always reluctant to call it a case. I mean, it's like a horror story to me, and it's just
a horror story. Yes,
it's a horror story, and it was last.
A car crash.
It's a car crash, and it was before the convictions occurred last year, and I was listening to reports from the trial, and it just struck me. It was like an intuitive thing that it doesn't feel right, and then that built and built and built. And can I ask you in return, at what point you first heard about this, and when did it sort of cause you issues in terms of what it might be?
I first heard about it reading The Guardian in 2017. I mean, the very first announcement in the newspaper.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God, here we go again, because it looked just the same as Lucia de Beck.
Yes, right? Because you'd been through that, and you could see the.
So I followed what was coming out, and all the time I felt unhappy about it. But of course, we didn't know anything about evidence or whatever. But anyway, this motivated me to work with the Royal Statistical Society people to write a report about the things that can go wrong and how to stop them from going wrong. Of course, unfortunately, they all had already gone wrong. They'd done everything wrong, according to our book of how to do these things properly. And then the trial started, and I got more and more sinking feeling as it went through, and it stunk to high heaven.
Well, it did, and you've got this really.
Sorry, I have great help in my life, my wife, and she looked in the Guardian one day when reporting the trial, and she said, "Richard, she's innocent. You've got to do something about it."
Well, absolutely. Do you know the way you just said that there about what your wife said? That's how it came to me I mean, I didn't know anything about it other than what I was hearing about the ongoing trial, but it felt like that. It felt like that sense. And then from then, it's been
you and my wife are not the only ones, because quite a lot of people had that, but we were cowed into submission, and we were not able to say anything.
That's true, and it's changed so much in a year, hasn't it? It's radically different.
Yeah, there's still a lot of nasty people on Facebook, I noticed, but less on
Yes.
these days.
I've been moving away from the social media because I found it a bit too much at the moment.
Yes.
And yes, I have noticed you've had to put up with some.
Well, I search it out because I like confronting these people and finding out if they're thinking anything at all, and if they know anything at all. And usually you find out they don't, and they're not thinking, they're pretty dumb and uninformed. And the thing is not to convert them, but to sort of shame them in front of their mates. And I think by arguing with these people on X or Blue Sky or whatever, you actually do help other people, the ones who are watching.
Yes, I can see what you mean there. I mean, I think there's also another echelon of people, such as I would put in there the reporters from the Daily Mail and perhaps Judith Moritz, in which they've become invested in a version of the story that
they've become totally invested
emotionally almost.
Yes, and remember Judith Moritz and Liz Hull.
That's it.
These are not investigative reporters. These are court reporters. Their job is to sit there in the courtroom and sort of feel the atmosphere and then write, grabbing stuff for the newspapers. And so they become just as convinced as the jurors. And the jurors and those reporters sitting there for 10 months and hearing one horror story after another about the last days of a tiny little infant and then there's this odd person sitting in the dock looking a bit odd, and they get these heaps of technical medical stuff by very pompous professional junior.
Well, exactly. It was like eight or nine of them, wasn't it? I mean, the jury was utterly overwhelmed by these.
Less than a minute. I think we're going to have to say goodnight now.
All right. So are you in agreement? Would it be all right to put this on YouTube, this discussion?
I would love to.
Yes.
we should have a look at it first.
Yes. So, sorry, did you say you'd like to look at it first? You'd like to watch it?
Well, I would prefer to. I mean, I dare